Alright, so we all know about the fourth Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Every Indiana Jones movie has an object or artifact that the plot revolves around, and in this case it's this thing, the Crystal Skull of Akator, a large, disproportionate, vaguely simian skull made of a shiny material. It's magnetic, it can repel insects, and it emits an ominous buzzing sound at all times. And it's the skull of an ancient alien. This is common knowledge by now. But what you might not know is that crystal skulls are real. At least they're real in the sense that they exist, and you can go and visit them in a museum. But they're also not real. Not real in the sense that they don't hum or attract metal. They're not from another dimension or even anywhere as interesting or old as the Aztec Empire. So why are we talking about them anyway? Why do they matter? Let's start with this guy. I'm told that his name is
Eugène Bauban.
but I'm going to call him Eugene to save myself the embarrassment. Eugene was a 19th century French antiquities dealer and self-proclaimed expert on pre-Columbian archaeology. Also, he was a bit of a showman, and he was willing to bend the rules a little bit in terms of authenticity. In the 1870s, he sold a bunch of these different skulls to various different museum collections and private collectors, and they ended up spread out all over the place because of that. Along with these sales, he claimed that they were ancient Aztec ceremonial objects that were steeped in magic and mystery. Now, while there's maybe a dozen or so individual skulls floating around, along with a few more that we maybe know less about, we can take a look at some of the more well-known pieces here to start to get a profile on them. The British Museum's Crystal Skull is probably the most iconic of the bunch. It showed up around the 1890s and has been featured in lots of different books and documentaries and TV specials, and for a long time it was actually touted as a genuine Aztec artifact. Eventually, though, after the skull had been in the possession of the museum for long enough, they collaborated with the Smithsonian Institution to analyse the skull. What they found on the skull's surface was interactions with modern carving techniques like rotary wheels and also the use of diamond cutting, which is technology that the Aztecs really didn't have access to. So what we're looking here is less of an ancient artifact at this point and more of an antique or a curiosity. It's definitely still valuable, but not necessarily for the right reason. Oddly enough, though, the Smithsonian actually had a skull of their own. This one was mailed anonymously to the Smithsonian Institution in 1992 with a note on it claiming that it was of Aztec origin and had magical powers. So again, they did the responsible thing and tested it, and predictably, again, they found that it had been carved using modern tools, probably closer to the 20th century. Oh my god, these bugs. The Natural History Museum ended up putting it on display as a modern fake, because, I mean, look at it, it's still pretty neat. But we can start to see the pattern emerging here. I mean, this is pretty egregious. It's not really a deep-rooted conspiracy of any kind. And then, of course, there's the Mitchell Hedges skull. This is the one you'll typically find in conspiracy theories and History Channel documentaries at 3 in the morning. It's supposedly, quote-unquote, perfectly carved, anatomically accurate, able to maintain a constant temperature of 21 degrees on its surface, and was imbued with psychic energy by a high priest 3,600 years ago. The story goes that it was found in the 1920s in the ruins of a temple in Belize by Frederick Mitchell Hedges and his daughter Anna. The truth is that there's no proof that the skull was ever actually found here. There is, however, legal records that prove that Mr. Mitchell Hedges bought the skull at an auction at Sotheby's in London in 1943, which is decades after the skull was even supposedly discovered, let alone originally made. Anna Mitchell Hedges inherited the skull after her father's death and remained adamant about its supernatural properties to the extent that she actually went on tour with it a few times. Ultimately, somehow it ended up in the care of the Smithsonian again, who went ahead and tested it. They actually went through quite a lot of testing and crystallography techniques on it and eventually found that it was made probably in the 20th century using tools that Mesoamerican cultures just didn't have access to. Also, apparently, if you use facial reconstruction techniques on it, it's female and has mostly European facial build, so if it is anatomically accurate like the conspiracies say, then yeah. But what I think makes the skulls interesting isn't that they're fake, but instead it's the amount of attention that they've managed to attract in spite of being fake. They're modern creations that have still found their way into museum collections and conspiracy theories and all sorts of popular culture. At some point along the way, it was decided that there was something to see in them, even if there was no proof that that something was ever actually there. And I think at that point it becomes less about gullibility and more about storytelling. and I think these skulls tell more of a story about humanity in general than any other ancient civilization or aliens from beyond. And that story, I think, is what makes them worth putting on display, even if that story started in a cellar in Stuttgart instead of a temple in Tenochtitlan. Thanks for listening.